Hi guys, and welcome to DIY Hair School. My name is Jillian. I'm a professional hairstylist and I'm here to teach you how to dye your own hair at home. On today's video, we are going to be talking about dyeing your hair dark when you have previously lightened hair. What that means is if you have bleached blonde hair like mine, there are certain steps that you need to take when you want to dye your hair dark so that you don't get muddy, green, or dull results. When you're dyeing your hair dark from blonde, you need to do what is called a tint back or filling your hair. The reason you need to fill your hair is because during the process of lightening your hair, you removed all of the underlying pigments that were in your hair. These underlying pigments are warm tones such as golds, reds, and coppers. Now that your hair is blonde, you have no more of those underlying pigments in your hair. These underlying pigments are very important in giving you a rich, saturated, and vibrant color of brown, even if you're going for an ash brown color. If you don't fill the hair before you put the dark dye on, you run the risk of your hair being very faded out looking, being very hollow color, or possibly even being a bit green or gray. Everybody has a friend who's been blonde, decides they want to go back to their natural hair color. Maybe they have a natural ashy brown color in their hair, so they run to the drugstore, they buy a box of ash brown hair dye that matches their natural root, they put it on their blonde hair, and their hair goes green. The reason that their hair goes green is because the ash brown is designed with the assumption that it's going to have to counteract some natural underlying pigments in coppers and golds in the hair. And so to get an ash color, the color needs to neutralize those gold colors that are going to come out while it's dyeing the hair. However, because you are starting out so blonde, there are no underlying natural pigments that are coming out, and therefore the green tone that's in that ash hair dye has nothing to counteract and just deposits itself on your hair, and now you see green in your brown hair and you've got this mossy green brown that is just terrible. Before we go on how to fill your hair before you dye it brown, a quick tip: if you've already tried to put an ashy brown or a natural brown on top of your blonde and you have ended up with this green color and you're trying to fix it, you can still add those missing pigments back after your hair has gone green. Think of it as a toner and grab a red or a copper brown and put it over top of your green brown. That should neutralize out the green and you should end up with a nice neutral brown tone. If it's still a bit green, just add a little bit more warmth. Just keep adding more orange and red to your hair until you've neutralized out all that green pigment. So now that we know what filling is and why we need to do it before we dye our blonde hair dark, let's talk about how to go about filling our hair. It's best to choose a demi-permanent hair dye to fill your blonde. Choose a color that has a red or a copper or a warm base. You don't want anything natural or ashy. Those are the tones that are going to have the blues and greens in them that we need to use after we've filled our hair. So when you're picking a demi-permanent hair dye to fill your hair with, choose either a copper, a warm, or even a red. Especially a red is especially good if you're going to be going for a really, really warm brown in the end. You want to pick a level of this demi-permanent fill dye that is between the level that you are now and the level that you want to go. If you've watched my previous videos, you know all about levels. So I am a level 10 blonde. If I wanted to dye my hair to a level 6 brown, I would pick a color in between the level 10 and the level 6. I would probably fill my hair with a level 8 copper. So just pick a level that's in between where you are and where you want to end up as your filler color. Dye all of your bleached blonde hair with this demi-permanent color as your fill. Okay, you're going to take a 10 volume, you're going to mix up your demi-permanent, you're going to put it all over your blonde. You don't need to put it on any natural roots that you have. You actually want to avoid any natural hair that you have, because if you make this really warm, that brown will be warmer than the rest of your hair, because this part of your hair will have natural underlying pigments still in it, because that is your natural hair. So just apply the filler to your blonde ends, mids, wherever the blonde is. Once you rinse the demi out, don't freak out. Your hair is going to be orange or red or gold, and it's supposed to be. So this right here is a level 8 copper demi-permanent swatch of level 10 blonde hair. So just like mine, if you put a level 8 copper, you are gonna end up a fiery ginger. And that's fine. That's exactly what you want, is to end up with that really nice ginger toned hair. Now that you've filled your hair, you can go ahead and apply your permanent or demi-permanent hair dye over top of your filled hair. I would suggest drying your filled hair completely before you add your next hair dye, or at least on damp hair. Definitely don't apply the next round of hair dye on wet hair. Process your second round of color as per manufacturer's instructions. Whether you've chosen to use permanent hair dye or demi-permanent hair dye, you can watch back to some of my other videos on how to choose what type of hair dye is best for you. My preference in a case like this is to always go with a demi-permanent hair dye again for your neutral shade over top of your filled ends. This is because it's going to have a lower level peroxide, a low level of ammonia, and it's just going to be a lot more gentle on your hair, because don't forget, you've now dyed your hair twice over top of your bleach blonde ends. So to avoid as much damage as possible, I suggest sticking with only demi-permanent when you're tinting back from a bleach blonde. You can always go back and do your roots with a permanent in a third stage if you have grays or anything like that, or just use the demi-permanent all over everything. But really it comes down to what you need in your hair. So if you're not sure, go back and watch my previous videos about how to choose what type of hair dye you need to achieve what you're trying to achieve. So sometimes when you don't fill your hair might not go green or gray or anything like that, but the color will still look dramatically different. So I'm just going to give you a little visual of the difference between a pre-filled hair strand at a level 10 and a non-pre-filled strand at a level 10. Both of these swatches were dyed with a level 6 natural hair dye. One of them is pre-filled with the copper level 8 that you saw, and one of them just went straight over top of the level 10 blonde. Now we didn't get any green tones or anything like that, which is great, but the color does look significantly flatter and less luminous than the color that had the undertone in it. So here you can see these are both a level 6 natural. And you can just see the one is significantly darker and flatter looking, and the one that was pre-pigmented has come out a lot more of a warm shade of brown. So I have a better visual for you that I'm going to add in here in better lighting that really shows the true difference between the two colors. Something to keep in mind when you are covering up platinum blonde hair or really porous blonde hair that has been lightened for a long time, you're probably going to get fadage pretty quickly. The color, no matter how dark you go, is going to fade pretty fast. This is totally normal. It's just because your hair is so porous, it's going to have a hard time holding on to the dye. Just refresh it again in a few weeks with the same shade in a demi-permanent hair dye. Even if you used a permanent hair dye when you refresh, I do suggest sticking to the demi-permanent as to avoid any more damage to your hair. Something also to keep in mind that I have said in a few other videos is to remember that cool colors are always going to appear darker than warm colors. So referring again back to my two swatches, these are both a level 6, even though in this lighting they look a lot darker, but they are both a level 6 brown. This one is a warm brown, so it looks significantly lighter than this one. However, it's not. They are both level 6. It's just one is very cool, one is very warm. Warm colors are always going to appear lighter. So when you're choosing how cool of a dye you want to go, then you want to consider how dark it's going to look. So if you're wanting something to not look super dark, you either want to make a lighter shade in an ash, or you want to go a bit warmer if you do want that depth and that darkness. Thanks so much for being here with me today, guys. Like and subscribe and hit that notification button, because in my next video, I'm going to be talking all about how to do your own highlight. Let me know if you have any questions or want to see any topics covered in my upcoming videos. And follow me on TikTok for any little small quick tips that I have. And I will see you next time, guys, on DIY Hair School.